The Senate will come to order. I ask everyone present to please rise and repeat with me the Pledge of Allegiance. Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Today's invocation will be offered by the Reverend Peter Young from Mother Teresa Community.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator. Let us pray as we celebrate today this important day of St. Patrick's. There's been an old Irish traditional kind of statement that they've always believed in, that we will try always to, unless someone offers a friendly smile, a helping hand, a caring word, a listening ear, somebody somewhere loses the courage to live. It's an important kind of thing that creates then the dialogue rather than the monologue in our meeting today. When we meet in session, sometimes we stop listening and use our communication skills to advocate only for the agenda that we have, but God wants us to communicate with respect and care to each other and in this chamber so that we might use our skills and common good for the statement of New York State citizens. Help us to share open ears and to be hospitable in mind and thinking. Share our building community instead of the disunity of anything for our citizens. May we remember the important call of this 4th century saint who led the call to try to unite Ireland into a common kind of belief of helping one another. Amen. Thank you. I appreciate it. Wellness all the way.
Have the reading of the journal.
In the Senate, Wednesday, March 16th, the Senate met pursuant to adjournment. The journal of Tuesday, March 15th was read and approved. On motion, Senate adjourned.
Without objection, the journal stands approved as read. Presentation of petitions. Message from the Assembly. Messages from the Governor. Reports of standing committees. Reports of selected committees. Communications and reports from state officers. Motions and resolutions. Senator DeFrancisco.
Yes, can we have a little bit of order here today? And I have, Mr. President, I wish to call up my bill print number 6650. It's not my bill, it's actually Senator Little's bill, 6650, recall from the Assembly, which is now at the desk.
Secretary will read.
Calendar number 184 by Senator Little, Senate Print 6650, an act to authorize.
Call the roll on.
No. May I now move to reconsider the vote by which this bill was passed?
Call the roll on the recommendation.
Adabo, Flanagan, Klein, Stewart, Cousins, Young, ayes 54.
I now offer the following amendments.
Amendments are received, and the bill retains its place on the third reading of the calendar.
Mr. President, I now move that the following bill be discharged from its respective committee and be recommitted with instructions to strike the enacting clause. That's Senate 6374 by Senator Marchione.
So ordered.
Yes, would you please recognize Senator Gianaris?
Senator Gianaris.
Mr. President, I move that the following bill be discharged from its respective committee and recommitted with instructions to strike the enacting clause, Senate Bill 6548.
So ordered.
We now go back to motions. Well, we're still there. Back to resolutions. Can we take up previously adopted Resolution 4217 by Senator Amador, read the title only, and call on Senator Amador?
The Secretary will read.
Legislative Resolution number 4217 by Senator Amador, commending student-athlete Aiden Cohane upon the occasion of capturing the 2016 New York State Overall Men's Alpine Skiing Championship.
Senator Amador.
Well, thank you, Mr. President, and happy St. Patrick's Day to you.
Thank you, sir.
Today we are graced with a fine group of students from Wyndham Ashland Jewett School District, which is in Greene County and the part of the district I serve. And they're up in the gallery, who represent the student council of the fine school as well as the mock trial team. And in the team, part of the student council and all of the classmates there is one particular individual who has really set, I believe, Wyndham on a map, not just being a great place of skiing in the Catskill region in upstate New York, but also an individual who has accomplished a victory that for the first time in state history, in the state school title in history, Aiden Cohane has been able to accomplish and won the 2016 New York State Men's Alpine Skiing Championship. So for all of those years of skiing, from the Bunny Hill to the Black Diamonds of all of the ski mountains throughout the Catskill region, Aiden and his father, who is accompanied with him today, we recognize you for your great accomplishments and your leadership. May you continue to win many more gold medals in years to come. Thank you, and God bless you.
Congratulations.
Could we please take up the reading of the non-controversial calendar?
The secretary will read.
Calendar number 87 by Senator Klein, Senate Print 853, enact amend the insurance law.
Read the last section.
Section 7, the statute take effect on the 180th day.
Call the roll.
Adabo, Flanagan, Klein, Stewart, Cousins, Young. Ayes 54.
Announce the results. It's bill passed.
Calendar number 194 by Senator O'Mara, Senate Print 4926B, enact to amend the environmental conservation law.
Read the last section.
Section 3, the statute take effect immediately.
Call the roll.
Adabo, Flanagan, Klein, Stewart, Cousins, Young.
Bill passed. Nope, sorry, excuse me. Lay it aside for the day.
Calendar number 212 by Senator Amador, Senate Print 6515, enact to amend the highway law.
Read the last section.
Section 3, the statute take effect immediately.
Call the roll.
Adabo, Flanagan, Klein, Stewart, Cousins, Young.
Yeah. Senator Amador.
Mr. President, I'd like to explain my vote. This piece of legislation is extremely important because this is an individual, Major General Greene, who served our country well and was the highest decorated officer or official that had died in military service since Vietnam War. And back in 2014, August 4th, when the Afghan soldiers opened fire on a meeting of senior military officials, as I said, he was the highest-ranking American officer to be killed in combat in that war zone since Vietnam. Major General Greene grew up and was from the town of Guilderland, which is Albany County, which I know Senator Breslin has served, and he was a graduate of RPI and a decorated Army soldier who dedicated his life and career to our nation. So I believe it's very important that we memorialize those who have served our country, made the ultimate sacrifice, and who have helped pave the way for our freedoms and liberties. So thank you, Mr. President, for allowing me to explain my vote. I vote aye.
Announce the results.
Ayes 56.
The bill is passed.
Calendar number 253 by Senator Ranzenhofer, Senate Print 1557, enact amend the alcoholic beverage control law.
Bill's laid aside.
Calendar number 274 by Senator Griffiths, Senate Print 2265, enact amend the highway law.
Read the last section.
Section 4, the statute take effect on the 120th day.
Call the roll.
Adabo, Flanagan, Klein, Stewart, Cousins, Young.
The bill is passed.
Ayes 57.
Senator DeFrancisco.
Could you please now take up the controversial reading of the calendar?
Ring the bell. The Secretary will read.
Calendar number 253 by Senator Ranzanoff for Senate Print 1557, enact amend the Alcoholic Beverage Control Law.
Senator.
Thank you, Senator Kruger. This is a bill which would amend the Alcohol Beverage and Control Law. It would allow courts to impose an additional fine when someone who has been cited for underage drinking fails to show up in court, fails to complete their treatment that has been required by the court, or fails to complete their community service. What's actually happening in our communities is that obviously, this state has a policy which has said that we really want to discourage young people from becoming substance abuse users, whether it be drugs or alcohol, and in this particular case, alcohol. So young people, unfortunately, are drinking underage, and the purpose behind this is to make sure that we get our young people on track, that we make sure that if they've been given a citation, whether it's at a concert where they've been drinking underage or hanging out in a park, whatever they've been doing, to make sure that they understand that this is a serious problem, not only for our community, but for themselves. So what we want to do is to encourage them to at least originally abide by the court's directives of either paying a minor fine, completing their substance abuse evaluations and treatments, or a community service. And I will note that this bill passed this House the last 4 years, and last year the vote was 59-1, so it has pretty strong bipartisan support in this chamber.
3, Mr. President, if the sponsor would please yield.
Sponsor yield.
Yes, Mr. President, I will.
I want to thank the sponsor for his explanation. And he's right. In the past, most members of this body have, in fact, supported this bill. And I might not have noticed why I didn't want to support this bill if not for the fact that the U.S. Department of Justice just sent us all a letter and a reference to a series of reports where they are highlighting their vast research into the growing use of fines and fees and bail, although this is not applied to bail, and the negative impact it is having on young people and people of color throughout the country. And the fact that we have been increasing the fines and the fees in the criminal justice system to such an extent that we've actually created a giant cycle of debt for low-income young people in this country, and that it has actually gotten to the point where research shows 20% of the people in jail in this country are actually in jail because they couldn't pay the fines and the fees applied through our criminal justice system. So I guess my first question to the sponsor is, what do we think this will accomplish other than to increase the amount of money, probably increase the amount of money we are demanding of young people?
Well, first of all, let me just address the portion of your comments dealing with jail. Under this provision of the law, as I'm sure that you are aware, there is no provision for someone to go to jail. If someone does not abide by either paying their initial fine or doing their community service or getting an evaluation and a treatment, they still can't go to jail. The court can't issue a warrant for their appearance because it's not that type of criminal sanction. Furthermore, in this particular bill, we're not increasing the fine. The fine is actually very low. It's $50. And what we're doing is we're imposing a penalty. So if you don't pay your minor fine, and I will just tell you from my experience, very often courts are not even imposing fines because they're more concerned with making sure that the young person understands that you're 15, 16, 17, 14 years old, you're engaging in binge drinking. The outcome is not going to be good for you or your family, whether you're going to be turning yourself into an alcoholic, whether...
Excuse me, pardon me. Can you recognize me for a moment?
Senator DeFrancisco.
Could you move your mic up? We're having a very difficult time hearing on this side, and there's been a request to raise the volume, both in the mics and in your voice, so we can hear.
Okay, so I will gladly increase it, because...
Wasn't listening.
I think that's true. I think that's true on most of bills.
Senator Razanoff.
So if you want, I can repeat everything that I just said for your benefit, but you can also go and watch the tape, so I'll give you that alternative. But in this particular situation, this is really being done for, the benefit of the young person. And one other issue that I'll just raise parenthetically is in one particular community that I represent, there's a very large concert venue. And you talk about, the cost of this situation. So, the concert ticket could cost, $75 or $100. You buy your alcohol for another $30 or $40, and then there's a $50 fine. So the message here is that if you don't pay your $50 fine or your $25 fine or your $30 fine, or you don't complete your community service, or you don't get your alcohol evaluation and any treatment that's recommended, well, in that situation, yes, then the court, has the right, if this bill is passed, to impose a higher penalty. So the comments about jail, incarceration, and bail really are not applicable to this particular bill that we're passing. And again, the whole point here is to get a young person to understand that, this is really done out of concern for their well-being and for their future, to make sure that we can nip this in the bud at age, again, 13, 15, 17, 19, whatever the case may be, rather than deal with the very serious problems of somebody becoming a substance abuser, whether it be prescription drugs or heroin or cocaine. This is really an effort to try to stop that early on.
Mr. President, if the sponsor would continue to yield.
Will the sponsor yield?
Mr. President, I'll be happy to continue to yield.
Thank you.
Senator
So perhaps my mic wasn't loud enough either, because I did in my question point out this bill does not address incarceration. I agree with the sponsor. But in fact, the research shows that the patterns of young people ending up incarcerated are actually growing out of higher and higher fees and penalties that are not paid, leading them ultimately into the prison system. And there have been a number of national studies documenting that. But going back to the specifics of this bill, the sponsor referenced in his own community, or a specific community in his district, the rates of problems. He said binge drinking. Is this bill specifically only for binge drinking or one open can of beer?
The law in the state right now is that if you are under a certain age, you are not allowed to drink alcohol. So in the original bill, the quantity, it's not an issue of quantity. You're not, when you're under 21, you're not allowed to drink. It's as simple as that.
I agree. The law is clear. Under 21, you're not allowed to drink. So, question. So, under the law, if you are found with one open can of beer under 21 and you are fined $50 in community service and you fail to complete either the community service or pay the $50, you then, under this law, would be fined $500 for that original 1 can of beer. Is that my correct reading of the bill?
The court would have discretion that they can impose an additional fine up to $500. They can impose an additional $10 fine. They can impose an additional $50 fine. But the law provides that $500 would be the maximum.
Through you, Mr. President, if the sponsor would continue to yield.
Yes,
Thank you.
Mr. President.
Has the sponsor done any analysis within the community that he was using as an example of the proportion of people arrested under the current law by race or gender? Because the national data with a variety of different communities having been studied show that the laws on underage drinking the penalties seem to be disproportionately applied to young people of color. I'm wondering whether there's any analysis from the community he was referencing.
Again, the question, Mr. President, originally dealt with incarceration, dealing with
just the
people
fines.
of different races. Again, this is really not an issue dealing with incarceration. I don't believe that the court system, and I am not sure because, it's not just a situation where they have this concert venue where there are many people from the community and there are many people from outside the community. So I'm not sure if this particular community keeps track of the number of people from within their community or outside, the number of people within their county or from outside, or the demographics of the people, the young people that are appearing before them. The important part of this legislation is that no matter where the community is that you're coming from, the important thing is we want to send the message through the court system that we would prefer that you not engage in underage drinking, that you abide by the law really for your own benefit. So we're not dealing with 30-day or 28-day in-house detoxes later on. So the point is, to your question, I don't know if for this community or really for any community, again, it could be another community where a lot of people hang out in the park and engage in underage drinking. So I'm not sure if each community is keeping track of whether those people live in the neighborhood or outside the neighborhood, from their town or not their town or otherwise.
Through you, Mr. President, if the sponsor will continue to yield.
Will the sponsor yield?
Yes, I will, Mr. President.
I agree with the sponsor. I don't know how many towns are keeping data, but the towns that are keeping data, the research results are quite consistent that municipal fines on minor criminal penalties disproportionately go to the poorest in the population and those of color. And so, in fact, there's national data showing that that is, in fact, what happens. Through you, Mr. President, if the sponsor would continue to yield.
Will the sponsor yield?
Yes.
So if someone hasn't paid the $50 fine on the criminal activity of having 1 can of open beer when they're not 21, the court can then, in fact, apply a $500 fine, but can apply up to a $500 fine. Who's likely to actually have to pay that fine when we're talking about someone under 21? The young person or their family?
Well, first of all, generally, the situation is more problematic not for somebody not paying their fine. The problem arises in a number of situations. The first is that the person just ignores showing up for court. It also occurs where the person has not completed their community service. And I know that the community that I'm referring to, the gravest concern is that the person has not gotten their evaluation for whether or not they have an alcohol problem. So it's not just in the situation where someone has not paid the fine, but it also applies to their other areas. So in other words, if there was a fine, again, the fine here is a maximum of $50, and in the situation that I'm referencing, normally the concert ticket far exceeds the fine. So what you have is somebody buying a concert ticket for $75 or $100, and again, I don't know whether it's the young person that bought the ticket or the parent or the guardian that bought the ticket, but I would imagine that, and again, this would be pure speculation, you know, if somebody doesn't, someone going to mom and dad or their grandmother or their uncle or their brother to pay the $50 fine, are they doing something to earn that money? So that's something that I don't know exactly, number one, where they got their money to buy their concert ticket. I don't know where they got their money to buy their alcohol. Hopefully it's not from their parents or their guardians. And I don't know where they would get their money or where they do get their money to pay up to that $50 fine that could be imposed if the court decided to do that.
Through you, Mr. President, on the bill.
On the bill.
I want to thank the sponsor for his answers. I don't actually know whether kids who pop open a can of beer before they're 21 are more or less likely to buy concert tickets, so I'm not sure of the correlation in the expenditures there. But I do know that on a national level, the research shows that increasing the monetary penalties for minor infractions of the law, and I think most of us would define underage open container as a minor infraction of the law, that the result is we've been increasing the monetary penalties. We actually aren't collecting the money anywhere. So I agree with the sponsor's analysis in his memo that many people are not paying the $50, and the national data shows that that's true. In fact, it shows a much lower rate of payment than even the statistics the sponsor uses for the community he's referencing. But what we are showing is we're spending more in criminal justice just applying these penalties and attempting to collect them than we are collecting. There's no research that shows a financial penalty for an underage drinking capture is actually decreasing the use of alcohol. I have to say I like the evaluation part for counseling people on underage alcohol use. I think that's valuable, but I don't think that should or needs to be associated with growing financial fines. The data shows that it is disproportionately poorer people who end up with these large financial fines. I think the obvious answer for why didn't you pay the $50 was you didn't have the $50, so how could you pay the $500? And when suddenly it's $500, you're very well talking about a family's ability to either pay the rent or pay that fine, buy food for the next several months or pay that fine. Now, if there was any research evidence showing the paying of the fine was going to change the behavior of the young person, maybe, but the research shows just the opposite, that it's not actually resulting in changing the behavior of young people. It's just increasing the likelihood that any given young person who gets caught up in any way with the criminal justice system ends up caught up more in the system with greater fines being owed and not paid. And ultimately, under many of New York State's laws, but I agree with the sponsor, not this one, step 3 or step 4 is incarceration after you haven't paid your fines. So I object to this bill, but I really object to the entire pattern of laws that not just this state, but according to the federal government, states all over the country have been escalating with a huge number of young people ending up with large amounts of financial penalties owed to a criminal justice system that then spends more trying to collect than it ever collects. It doesn't accomplish a criminal justice goal, but it sure is increasing the number of young people from poor communities who end up in financial debt, who end up then having the risk of entering the criminal justice system with money owed and then leading to incarceration. I urge my colleagues to take a look at an entire package of reports that are now online and available associated with the U.S. Department of Justice Civil Rights Division Office for Access to Justice. They put out what they call a resource guide for reforming assessment and enforcement of fines and fees. It links to it from the site. I am happy to make copies for anyone who does not have access on their computer to finding these reports. It tells me a lot about what's right and what's wrong with the approach we've been taking by increasing the financial fines and fees and penalties. And because of that, I'm urging everyone here not to vote yes for this bill, even if they voted yes in the past. I think we should look at research when it comes to criminal justice reform, and I think the research now is quite clear that this would continue New York State down the wrong path for our young people and our criminal justice system. I'm urging a no vote. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Kruger. Just a little order in the House, please. Senator Sanders.
Happy St. Patrick's Day, Mr. President.
Same to you.
Although I agree with my esteemed colleague in his attempt to combat underage drinking and open containers, which I view as detestable, I fear that he has gone too far. I fear that he's went to try to shoot a fly with a shotgun, that the law of unanticipated consequences is going to get us, that we are seeing a type of hang 'em high legislation, not this one and not from my colleague, throughout the nation on the ability of poor people to pay fines. I remind us that America has moved a long way from the day of the poorhouse. Used to be a time when you didn't have money, you'd be thrown into the poorhouse to work your way out of it, God willing, or not work your way out of it. We've gone a long way, and while $50 or $500 may not be much to many people in this room, $50 or $500 to an unemployed youth may be the difference between going to the poorhouse or the jail or whatever we're going to do and not going. This is one of the reasons why the Department of Justice study on the town of Ferguson pointed out many of these things that if viewed independently perhaps had meaning, but if viewed collectively were draining and bleeding that town something also awful, and many towns like it. Now, I would encourage my colleague that if he were to go this path, then he should think of how that a young person can work their way back, how that they could expunge their records. If they're, if they 16 years old, you get caught. Of course, no one in this room ever was in that situation, and thank God for that. But if there was a person who 16 years old found themselves in such a shape, you may want to speak of expunging your record. You want to speak of, okay, you do community service, you do good, and then at a certain point in your life, you can get rid of that completely. You don't want that stuff lingering and going further into 18, 21, etc., putting them on a path that we don't want them on, where their youthful foolishness would put them in that situation. So if more of that were in this legislation, if more of that were involved, I would be much more open to it. And again, I wish everyone a happy St. Patrick's Day. Thank you.